Hogstye.
Good evening, Hogstye fans. This is Alex coming at you. I got Steve and Jamal, and we have a special guest for this show. He goes by Brent from Burgundy Blog. He does the Burgundy Blog cast. Brent, want to welcome you to the show. You are prolific on Twitter. I think anyone who's a Redskins fan has seen you on there. But I just want to welcome you to the show. Welcome to the Hogstye.
Thank you very, very much for having me. I've enjoyed listening to y'all's pod a couple of times, and this is good. Thanks for inviting.
I'm sorry to hear that, but
hold on. First off, no, Alex, we're not going to do that.
All right, we won't do that.
Say thank you.
Thank you. Right.
Just leave it at that.
It's a very professional operation you're running here.
We try.
Only saw what really goes on for our little.
Well, he is on Skype, so technically he can probably see me and you. Never Jamal, because Jamal never shows his video.
I do. Yeah. I've got a big advantage here. I can see you guys, and I'm pretty sure I've got my own video turned off. So I feel like I got some leverage.
You've got the edge.
We had one guy one time who got mad at us for doing that. I'm not going to say who it is because he hates us now, but he said one of us rolled our eyes.
Oh,
He was making a point, and what really probably happened is we just looked up at someone in the house.
Yeah. Well, you could probably start guessing names.
Close attention to you.
Yeah, you could probably start guessing names and figure out who it was if you play the game. Let's get into
everybody.
Let's get into some. Let's get into some Redskins stuff. Because of your background, Brent, and let's just say you're in the medical field, that keeps it pretty broad. There's a big story coming out this week, and that is the Alex Smith ESPN documentary, I guess we'd call it, about his recovery and his leg injury. I'm assuming you've seen at least some of the video and the photos of how bad his leg actually was. Those came out this week on social media. What was your reaction when you saw those? And because I'm just, a schmuck, and I see those. I'm like, how did they just not say, let's saw this thing right off?
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. Initial reaction was probably one of shock and awe, like anybody else. I mean, I had a feeling. I think we all had a feeling right when that injury happened that was he wasn't going to be getting over that anytime real quick. And then obviously, last year when it started to come out that even his recovery was more complicated and protracted than expected. I had an idea in my head of probably what that meant, and so I can't say I'm terribly totally surprised to see those graphic the proof. But he what a warrior. I mean, holy cow. I don't blame you for thinking that they must have thought long and hard, and I'm sure they did think quite hard about taking that thing right off. We've heard about how sick he got too, which is really even the more important part of the whole story for him. Much worse than how his leg looks or feels was the fact that he got septic, and it does sound like his life was in jeopardy. So he's an unbelievably strong person and patient for having gotten through that.
What kind of chances, I don't know if this is even in your field enough to guess, but what kind of chances does he have of ever playing again?
I give him about zero. I thought that also immediately, when he got hurt, that given his age, it seemed extremely unlikely he would recover from even a pretty standard broken leg, at least of the magnitude that his clearly was. It seemed like a long shot. And then when it came out that, he had infections and had to go back multiple times, and then he had the external fixator and had this, all that hardware for so long.
I went through a lot.
My feeling is that there's almost no chance that he could ever come back and play. And it's not to say that he couldn't feel good and get good strength even. But, let me ask you this. Can you guys even imagine? Like, this has been my stance all along, is that even if he has a truly miraculous recovery and he's just basically alien in his ability to get over this, can you even fathom being an executive on the team that trots him back out there again in a real game and puts him in harm's way and puts him at risk of getting clobbered by a 355 pound guy, like, well, it could happen again. No one's going to know that it couldn't happen again, and if it does, it would be I can't even think of a worse PR situation.
I'd feel guilty beyond words about that.
I was already about to say the next question I was going to ask you is, why on earth are they even letting this man entertain the idea of coming back? Like, I don't tell
understand. You that, Jamal. The reason is for contractual reasons. He can't retire contractually without giving back guaranteed money. That's the reason.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, money plays a factor, of course. It's just more so on the top of like the realistic and the most logical sense. Like, you're not playing again. And even on Alex's side, I think it's a personal thing, and I respect it. I never played to his degree of sports at all. He's a professional. He wants to do something like that. Let him do it. But at the end of the day, you got to realize, like, this thing is it's far from the realms of playing again, especially at your age.
I don't think it's realistic, but as has been said many times, these guys, the attitude, the mentality of these warrior pro athletes is one of being able to overcome anything, and it would be foreign to him for you to tell him that there was no chance. I think also he knows that if he sets his sights on the very, very unlikely goal of actually getting on the field again, even if he falls way short of that, he will have rehabbed himself to being an extremely functional person and father and all that. So that there's a lot to that too.
So from a medical perspective, so we have a medical professional here saying 0% chance. So no, I think that's safe to say, don't worry. He will probably not replace Dwayne Haskins anytime soon. Let's talk a little bit about the draft. And on your last show, I guess it would have been your Friday night show. No, it was the next one. You were talking about the Trent trade, and it sounded like you kind of had a balanced view of things, of value as compared to the fact that they just sort of had to do it. So give us a little bit about your thoughts about the trade of Trent Williams.
I think that's fair to say about my impression. I mean, I think this is like the main topic this week, and for good reason, because he was the team's best player for a decade, and so you have to break down how it all concluded. But I think it's pretty obvious that as a player, he's worth much more than they got. But it's also pretty obvious that it really turned into a complete S show, and it had to end. I think the only like leverage, so to speak, that the Redskins may have had was this idea of, we don't have to do anything. We could keep him. He's still under contract for at least another year. And then, hey, we could even franchise him and all that, yada, 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 which was all fine to say, but it was totally unrealistic to think that he could actually come back. I mean, it was just the bridge had, was torched. And so, knowing that, and everyone else in the world knowing that, I think to get a couple of day 2 picks, one of them being a third, it's not a disaster is basically the way I think it could be looked at. It was that they didn't win. It's a loss overall. It's a loss, but it's not an embarrassing loss. I mean, the embarrassing part was what happened under Bruce Allen, and they did the best they could. And now you just got to move on.
You want to give a mea culpa on your Tampa Bay trade prediction?
Oh yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I put out on Twitter what I thought was a pretty credible lead that indicated that he was all but traded, and they were just waiting for the ink to dry. Actually, not to Tampa, but to Cleveland, and that obviously didn't happen. For whatever it's worth, I went through that pretty deeply, and I always do before I put out a rumor, even when I qualify it as a rumor. And I feel that was pretty darn close to being true. It was obviously an overstatement, or at least premature. And then the guy followed up with me the next day and said, of course he was covering himself, but he said basically the way that actually was is that it was going to happen if that tackle hadn't fallen to Cleveland at number 10, and then of course it did.
Yeah.
Well, two things though. First thing is, I mean, technically you said, take it for what it's worth. So, I mean, I understand you did mention, I think you said to somebody that you hold a standard. So that's one thing in itself. But, the backtracking thing, you didn't really necessarily need to do it, because, you put it out there like this is something that you're hearing, and it's not necessarily for a fact, but you're confident enough that you can take it forward and let people know. And that's cool. Everybody else to, that's on everybody else to, necessarily like either take it with a grain of salt or actually hope that it's going to happen.
We've all been fed bad rumors. too.
Yeah, it happens. But the second thing is, do you really think, before we actually move on to the draft, but do you really think that Trent Williams was in this realm, like in the recent days or recent weeks, do you think he was actually responsible for turning down the actual trade offers that were in place that you think the Redskins probably had for him? Or is this something that's he say type thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely don't have any inside track on that, but I would say that it stands to reason that that he certainly might have, and I think he probably did interfere once that thing was getting close with Minnesota, because I mean my main thinking on that is just that the eventual outcome that actually did come to pass, which was him becoming a 49er, in my view is superior, because he's on I mean, Minnesota's a good team and they're a contender and they're built to win, but San Fran is like a layup. I mean, that team's going to be really good, and they run the ball like nobody else. So Shanahan is going to put him in a position to just look absolutely tremendous. I mean, I think he couldn't be in a better landing spot. If he's healthy, they're going to run that zone running scheme, and a bunch of random guys like Raheem Mostert are going to just, they're going to have multiple 1,000-yard backs, and he's going to look like the best tackle in the game again. And then he's going to get some sick contract next year. So I think when he realized that was a possibility, I'm sure he, did whatever he could to make that happen.
Well, speaking of tackles, I've been going back and forth on Sadiq Charles for days. We've had people who love him. We've had people who don't love him. Your thoughts on whether Sadiq can start immediately? That's what the Redskins need, right? They need somebody to fill his shoes. Is it him or is it not him?
Yeah, that's a nice question too, and it certainly has been. I mean, it's been painted that way, that he's the immediate heir apparent, right? I mean, they traded him, and then like 7 minutes later they drafted Charles, so it sure is set up that way. I'm not going to act like I was like a big time Sadiq Charles expert coming into it. I mean, I knew of him, but I lean no. I mean, I'm not super confident that he's a week one starter. I think he's a young guy. He did. Am I right that he started 3 years for them?
3-year starter, yeah.
So 3-year starter, but came out a year early, and he's got all this athleticism, which is great. But I mean, I think some people have said, had some questions about his technique and his polish, but also he's not big. I mean, he got big for the combine, but I'm not sure everybody realizes he put on 30 plus pounds so that he would have a nice looking weight at the combine. He was playing in the 280s for LSU. And there's a lot of questions about, how much of that is muscle and what's he going to look like when he's trying to play at that weight. I think there's quite a bit of, maturing that he's probably going to need to do. I mean, he's just he's not this Andrew Thomas, like polished final product. So I think that he's going to be probably in the mix, and I'm certain he has the most natural talent of the options that they're going to have for that position. But I don't think he's a slam dunk week one starter.
Well, I don't really either, and it sort of begs the question of, what's the plan here? Yeah. What is the plan? Tell us, just give us a little sense of, generally speaking, the job you think that Ron Rivera has done with the team this offseason.
I think that when they hired him, I was satisfied with it. I wasn't exactly over the moon with it, but I was pleased. I think they could have done a lot worse. I think he brings, most importantly, a sense of legitimacy and credibility. And I think that I'm happy with what he's done so far, primarily in that I think he's brought some much needed structure to the whole situation. And I would like to distinguish between structure and like hard ass discipline kind of style, which he may or may not be. And I don't really care. I just think that in the Bruce Allen / Jay Gruden era, there was not I don't think expectations – I don't sense that expectations were clearly explained to everybody. I don't think that standards were upheld and that there was consistency in the way players were treated. And maybe it's just Kool-Aid, but I'm buying that Rivera has come in and said, this is how I want it to be. This is what I expect. This is what you're going to do. And whether or not he's right, I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's not this schematic creative genius. In the past, his, things like his clock management and his game management have been questioned. I'm not sure that he's the most just academically superior coach that they're ever going to get. But I think he's brought structure, and as a fan, I was craving it, and I think the team needed it. I think the defense needed it, and Del Rio is part of that too. So I'm happy with that.
Structure and vision are so key, and I think you're actually hit the nail on the head right there.
Well, I think sometimes when you have a 75 Ford, you just sort of need to put tires on it and get oil in it and see if it runs before you worry about trying to make it go 120 miles an hour,
Nice. Mm-hmm. Nice.
Kind of. Yeah, and that's kind of our thought, too, here. But, Dan Snyder, we've been down this road before, right? We've had your authoritarian coaches in charge. We've had the marshmallow coaches like Jay Gruden. We've had GMs. So we've had Dan Snyder's literally done absolutely everything he possibly could in terms of structure of the front office. So the big question here is, has he really turned the corner, and has he really fixed this thing for good, or is this just yet another thing that's going to blow up in our faces in 3 years?
Yeah. Yep. Totally fair question. I mean, I don't see how you could confidently say that, yes, this is finally the one, this is finally the time. I mean, there's definitely no way to know. It's too soon. I feel like it's a good start. I mean, I'm excited with the near-term future. I'm excited to see how it pans out. And it kind of seems like since he picked Ron that he has mostly gotten out of the way. But it's happened too many times for anybody to think only a few months after hiring a new coach that this is finally the time.
Yeah, I feel like we said this when Gibbs came in. I feel like we said it when we fired Vinny. I feel like we said it when we got rid of Shanahan. I feel like
we said it every offseason this time. We've said this on this show.
No, not every offseason, but every 3 to 4 years.
Okay,
it's like the election cycle, Steve. We hope for change.
Election cycle. So now I do have one thing though, because when you talk about Snyder, like you can't help but think just over time, you can't help but think the damage that he's done to the fan base. Like there's no denying it. It just happened over time. It's eroded. But I also think that it's more dormant than it is eroded. Like there are still fans out there who just suppress their feelings for the team. It's not there. My question is, like, at what point do you really see the fan base, if things work out with Ron? This is also jumping the gun. I'm aware of this, but if things start to work out with Ron, like what do you think it'll take for the fan base to trust Snyder again and also just buy back into the Redskins?
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear what you guys think about this, but I do think I think that, I mean, speaking from experience, I became in the last couple of years much more than just disenchanted or disengaged. I became very angry and for pretty long periods tried to
you took a hiatus at one point.
yeah I mean I wasn't sure during that period if I was going to come back as a blogger or a tweeter or any of that stuff. I mean, I was, in fact, for a time I thought that I was not. I was completely off Twitter for about 8 months, and that was the long, way longer than ever in the 10 or 11 years since I started my website. But I feel that if they become a big winner fast, I think it's 90% coming back right away. I'm sorry, I still do. As bad as much damage as Snyder has inflicted on us. I mean, we're fickle, but we're forgiving because we're just suckers. I mean, fans are idiots anyway. It's totally irrational, completely irrational for any of us to care as much as we do about this stupid team anyway. But here we are. So we're in it, and we're dying for a winner. And if Ron brings us a winner, I think it's going to come back big time, and they'll fill that stadium. I mean, Snyder doesn't deserve for us to bounce back that fast, but I think we would.
I think that, number one, the Redskins could play in the parking lot of a Piggly Wiggly if they just won, and you would get 70,000 people there. I mean, it doesn't matter. I think fans will be back in a heartbeat. If they have one winning season, they'll be back. Yeah. That's what you asked me. What we think. That's what I think.
I don't. I mean,
they already dominate. They dominate talk. Local DMV talk radio, right? Even still, as bad as they've been for all this time, when they're the worst team in pro sports in the region, everybody leads with them.
I mean, I agree with that, but I think we saw for 2 years under Jay Gruden, at least, we were at least an above 500 team finally, and fans still kind of tuned out.
For a blink of an eye, though, it wasn't a consistently good team.
It was the most consistent they've been under Snyder.
It definitely was. But did anybody buy? I mean, in either of those winning seasons, did anybody think that they were actually a good team?
Absolutely not. No. And now, what I will say though, that I do remember, this is fairly recent because in the 2015 playoffs, Packers game, all you saw a sold out stadium. It was a mix. It was I don't know what the percentages were. I would lean the fact that it was more Redskins fans than it was Packers, given the strength that, it was a playoff game. It's prime time. The Redskins are doing well. All they know is playoffs, so everybody wants to be there. That's the only thing I can think of, but it goes to Burgundy, or Brent. It goes to his point that, when you're winning, they don't care. As long as you're winning, they'll be there. They'll support you. That's my guess. I don't think Dan deserves it. I ain't gonna lie to you, but I mean, it is what it is at this point, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, he's been so bad. He's been so bad.
So let's change gears here and get back to the whole draft discussion, since the draft just happened.
That happened over the weekend.
So Brent, give us your thoughts on. Let's start with the obvious number one thing that happened. They didn't trade back. They went for Chase, the safe pick, the best player supposedly in the draft. What are your thoughts on them not making that trade move?
I feel like in a lot of years, depending on the draft class and who's available at the very top, that I would have felt more strongly in favor of trying to accumulate the picks because, as we all know, they're far more than one player away. But I feel like in this year where it was set up for this particular individual to be there at number 2, Chase Young, I think that they probably made the right move because I don't think it's common that you get as close to a sure thing as he is. I mean, even last year there was Nick Bosa in the same spot, I guess, and he turned out, obviously he panned out. I mean, he's going to be an awesome pro, but there was not the same sense last year that at number 2 you were getting a guy who's definitely going to be a plus player, or an elite player, and it's just like. I mean, I'm no draftnik. This is not what I do professionally, but like every single person thinks he's going to just completely blow the roof off. So when it's that much of a slam dunk, I mean, take the guy and at an unbelievably important position, just take him and don't overthink it.
Give me your I guess surprise in the right term. Other than Chase Young, who is the one player that you're most excited about that we drafted? The Redskins drafted.
Yeah, mine is AGG, Antonio Gandy-Golden, and I think Gibson's going to be very exciting too. But AGG is a guy that I had specifically wanted. He was one of the few players who I was like sort of rooting for them to pick. That they, he's the only one that they actually did pick. And I've known a little bit about him for a while because he plays at Liberty, which is real close to my house, and so I've seen him play in person. I watched him play UVA, which is my squad, and I also know some people who know some things about him, and I believe a lot in his game and in his character, and I think he's going to be real good.
Okay, so I watched this film. I've never seen Liberty play live. My concern immediately watching this film is the dude just can't accelerate.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the top end, can't accelerate. The quarterback at Liberty was consistently underthrowing this guy time and time over and over and over again.
Upset.
Yeah, over and over again.
The quarterback.
So I guess what I'm wondering. I guess what I'm wondering for you is, since you've watched him, how does this skill set translate to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's going to need to learn a lot. He's going to learn how to run routes. His athleticism, though, is like truly, truly awesome. I mean, his catch radius and his hands are awesome. I think he's going to have to figure out ways to get. I mean, he's just not going to develop elite speed. He's going to be. You got to hope that he can figure out how to Anquan Bolden what he's got, and I feel like he might. And I also feel like he's not redundant for within the Redskins' current receiver core. As much as we all hate the back corner fade, you need somebody you can try. You got to, if you want it in the playbook, you got to have a guy who can run it. And I think that's him. I think he's going to be good in short yardage. I think he's going to be able to score. And I don't think he's going to, he's probably like Charles, not going to be a week 1 starter or a huge contributor. But I think probably before the end of his first year, I bet he'll be. I mean, I bet he can be a legitimate contributor.
My guy is Antonio Gibson out of this group. That dude, I think he's more of a running back than a wide receiver for sure. I guess I'm wondering what is the team going to do with the running back group now that they have him and they've got about 18 other guys. So Your thoughts on Gibson and where he kind of fits in?
I guess my thought on Gibson is that he probably fits in damn near the top right now. If they were going to not only take him in the 3rd round, but take him in the 3rd round of a draft where they didn't have a 2nd round pick, they like him a lot. So he's very safe and he's going to get fed is my bet. And so then you say, well, what do you do about AP? I mean, I believe that Rivera has a ton of respect for AP, and I doubt they're going to cut him, but I don't think that's off the table. I mean, most of the media is talking like it's just assuming that's not even a possibility. But if they get to whatever camp they're going to have, and Geis is healthy, or like if Bryce Love looks healthy, or if it turns out that actually after having played in the NFC South with him, that Rivera actually likes Peyton Barber quite a bit. I mean, either of those two guys, AP or Geis, I think could potentially be in jeopardy if they don't come correct.
Yeah.
That's literally what I was going to mention. Because Alex and Steve, I was unavailable for the Sundays podcast, but I do think that Gibson pick was putting pressure on the running backs, the running backs group in particular, but also what was just mentioned. I think it's AP and it's Geis, because Bryce Love doesn't really have any pressure given the fact that he's coming off an ACL injury. He doesn't have much to worry about. They're worried about him staying healthy and coming back when he's ready, or when they're ready, according to their timeline. But when it comes to Geis and when it comes to AP, AP's the old man, and they've been trying to push him out for 2 years now, and this is two different regimes. But then you have Darius Geis, who consistently gets hurt. I don't know what they feel about his off-the-field issues. I don't know how they feel about that. But at the same time, like when you mix the two and it doesn't look so well because you're not producing on the field, there goes Gibson. He's ready. He can do it all. So I guess it just depends, but it's interesting. I think they're putting pressure on the running backs, and it's up to them to respond.
It's clearly
but Gibson is really good.
It's clearly a philosophy shift that is about to happen with the running back core that we need to be ready for as fans and people who kind of watch this team and try and analyze it.
Have you heard any rumors about the health of Bryce Love?
No, I wish I knew a little more about it. It seems to be hard the information on him is hard to come by. But I mean, I feel like if he was in the picture, we would have heard a lot more about him by now.
That's kind of my thought.
Yeah.
Too unfortunate. So other than AGG, anybody? Let's ask it this way: who's the pick that you're least excited about of this bunch? Which was the? That's a horrible way to say it, isn't it? Who's the worst pick?
I know what you're trying to ask. Like, who are you least excited about? Yeah, it's the only one way to say it. So let's get out the way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a pick that. I honestly don't think there's a single pick where I was like, man, I'm pretty pissed off that they did that, because, once you get past the fourth round, honestly, none of those guys starting with the center, Ishmael. I mean, I didn't know anything about any of them, but when you're into the fifth round, you can only get so mad about it. They obviously saw something they liked about those guys. I think that I think it should be noted, as much as I like the early picks, and I think most people do. I think the draft is being well received overall, but beyond Chase Young, I mean, there's a little bit of risk everywhere. I mean, we're excited about Gibson because he looks electric, but I mean, there's also some questions like, how come he got so few carries and touches at a school like Memphis? And then, you talk about even my guy, Gandy Golden. It's like, well, he played at Liberty, so how is it going to translate? Yeah. And then Charles obviously has his own questions. Nobody even really fully understands why he missed 6 full games during, an undefeated national championship season. We think it's marijuana, but there's obviously some very mysterious underlying character issues going on there. So if everybody hits here, this could be a home run draft, but there's also a universe in which this whole thing is a dud. So I guess there's not really one person that, one draft pick that really pissed me off, but I do have the sense that they didn't really, and this wasn't a conservative draft. I think they took on a fair amount of risk pretty much across the board.
I'm still upset that we drafted another defensive end in the 7th round at the very last pick. That's what I'll say I'm mad about personally. Like, what, you couldn't have gone corner or kicker or any other position that you could have used somebody? I don't know.
Don't draft a kicker, for God's sakes. How long do you think it's going to be before Ron can turn this thing around? How about that?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a real fast rebuild, and I think they're going to be bad this year. I think they're going to be mediocre next year. And then I think in his 3rd year, there's a chance that they could be kind of dangerous, kind of frisky. But a lot was made of him saying, "Hey, I took this job because I really like the roster, and I think this can happen quickly." Well, you gotta follow what he does, and what does he do in free agency? Yes, he tries real hard for one big one, Amari Cooper. He misses, and then he doesn't regroup and go after another starter in his place. or he could have easily filled a bunch of holes with obvious with obvious starters, with guys with clear paths to starting. He didn't do that at all. He went out and signed 14 or 15 guys, none of whom is even a guaranteed starter, and a lot of whom may not even make the team. So to me, I guess there's two ways of looking at it. Either he thinks this roster is so good already that he didn't need to add anything, or he's basically saying, I don't really care how many games we win this year. This is just a culture reboot right now anyway. Let's just make sure everybody's competitive. In my opinion, it's clearly the latter. So I don't think it's going to be a real fast turnaround, because I just don't think he cares that much about how many games they win this year. I don't think he thinks he's a serious playoff contender this year.
In history proves that, only very few teams have done that. And we know we're running out of time here, and you've been generous with your time. But since we have a medical professional here, we got to ask one more here, which is, we're undergoing the COVID-19 pandemic here. As it relates to football, are we going to have football start on time, and are there going to be fans in the stand?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't think I know a damn more about that answer than you guys do, but.
I know you're not an immunologist, but you may know more than we do.
I mean, in general, philosophically, I'm in the camp that thinks that things can and should, pretty darn soon here start normalizing, and gradually, obviously. But I think football, obviously they've shown, the NFL, they went forward with free agency, they went forward with the draft. Clearly, that's a big difference from asking people to congregate to watch an event. But there's a lot of money at stake, and they want to get moving, and they're going to push it. And if they can do it, they're going to do it. And I certainly think there's going to be a season, and I think there's a pretty good chance that they won't really have to have a funky or delayed schedule. I think it could start on time. I have no idea if there's going to be people in the stands in the first month, because I don't really know who's going to be making the call. I mean, if it's scientists, then they're probably going to be a little more conservative. If it's somebody else, then they might force the issue.
I think that's kind of where a lot of us are at. Is it's just too far out, right? I mean, you don't know how this thing's going to be in 4 months.
Yep.
All right, great. Brent, it was great having you on. Folks, you should check him out. Burgundy Blog on Twitter, the Burgundy Blogcast, which you've been doing for how long now? You said you've been doing the website for 10 years?
Yeah, I've been tweeting for 10 or 11 years, but I guess I'm in the 6th season of the podcast.
Yeah, so he's like us. He's a grizzled veteran of the podcasting world at this point.
And I'm sure he's getting rich off it like we are.
Yeah, exactly. We're all broke.
99 cents a month, man. How much you make? But I appreciate you coming on, Brent. Truly appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, great having you on, Brent, and good talking to you. Have a great night.
Appreciate the invite. Y'all did a great job. Yep, hang in there. HTTR or whatever.
Yeah.
Something like that.
All right, see you guys.
See you.